Welcome to episode 1 of the Seeing Eye to Eye podcast with me, Shannon Wong, and Max Medert. And this is a podcast that we are trying to roll out, and we're going to try and do it every week or two. This is just our effort to bring forth to reality an idea that Max and I shared. We wanted to kind of talk about business, life, medicine, and hopefully the people who listen in will learn something and feel like it adds value to their life. And some of the topics we're going to talk about in the future will be topics such as our path to medicine, what it's like practicing medicine, how you balance life and family, work and family, podcasts we listen to. What are some other ideas that we talked about, Max?
Oh, there's so many. Just the way people converse, how you make an argument, how to interact with people that are trying to sell you something, which is happening all the time in our, capitalistic society. And just other topics that I think are really important nowadays, like the interaction or interface between AI technologies and medicine, AI and education, and who knows what else. So I'm very excited about this. We'll see what happens.
And as context, we work together.
Mm-hmm.
And Max joined our practice you joined, when did you start?
June 1st, 2023. Yeah, not too long ago.
So through this process, we're going to get to know each other a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Because although we work together, most of the time we're just kind of doing our own thing, and most of the time we're not even at the same office. So episode 1 is all about you. So it's your story, and where you came from, and your path to medicine, and if time permits, your path to ophthalmology, and eventually to Austin, Texas.
Sure. Yeah. So I think when you interview for a job or college or med school, they kind of ask you, what's your story, right? And usually what I tell people is, well, the truth, of course, which is that I don't come from a family of doctors. No one in my family is a doctor, never has been before, or have been before. I actually come from a family of musicians. My grandfather, Charlie, who has the same name as me, my first name's Charles, but I go by my middle name, Max. He was an all-around musician. He could play anything. He had a master's in music. He went to the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music. His sister did too, actually. She had a PhD, and she was one of the first women in the country to have that degree, and she taught at the university as well. He was a very interesting guy. Went to a lot of clubs and kind of lived that musician life. And then this guy named Hitler started a war, so he was drafted and sent to Texas, to Fort Walters, which is outside of Mineral Wells. And there he met my grandma. And kind of going from there, they moved to Ohio, which is where I grew up. And I grew up in the same house as my dad, and where my grandfather set down his roots. And my father also is not a physician. He also is musical, but more creative type kind of guy. Makes ads and jingles and stuff like that. And really, again, there was no precedent for me to go into medicine other than the doctors I interfaced with as a young boy. Going to your pediatrician. I had a lot of falls. I fell down a hill one time, broke my wrist, and I was playing soccer one time and broke my foot. And those, these little things kind of accumulate, these experiences with doctors, and they're there for you in a time of need. And they were kind of the professionals that I grew up around, I guess, that I would look up to because they would help me out. And my mom actually worked at a dermatology office called Dermatology Associates, which apparently has been bought out by now, but long story short, or that's not important. And I would go there all the time. They used to have these old medical record stacks. You remember those ones that would spin? Did you guys ever have that here?
We had them.
Oh man, I thought that was amazing as a 7-year-old. It was, I couldn't believe it. And probably looking back, not good with HIPAA, me looking around at some of these charts and stuff. But I didn't actually open them up, but just being around them. And the doctors there were so caring, so nice. We even like went to their house and would babysit their dogs when they were out of town. Really had a close bond with them, and they treated us right. And so that kind of set that early precedent. We were always very proud. In Cincinnati, you're kind of proud of everything in Cincinnati. You're proud of your baseball team. We're sometimes proud of our football team, I guess, nowadays more so than in the past. And we're really proud of our health care. Cincinnati Children's Hospital is a big deal. It's probably number 2, number 3 hospital in the country, and it's constantly talked about. And so I always looked up to that place and knew it was important. And as I grew up, I really didn't think of myself, as like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor or something like that. It actually was external feedback, usually from moms. You go to your friend's house and you get to know the parents a little bit, and they're like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd be like, I don't know. When I was 16, I wanted to get a Toyota Supra and get it tricked out and do street racing. That's not really what I wanted to be, but that was all how far ahead I was thinking. And then someone comes and tells you, you could be a doctor, and that was kind of eye-opening. It's usually from moms telling me this, because those were the people I looked up to, and so the fact that they saw that in me, that was really special.
Why would they say you could be a doctor?
I think so. I can't read their minds, but based on what the feedback they would give me, I was always I feel like I'm pretty kind, I'm easygoing, I'm approachable, I care about people, I'm curious, and moms always liked me, so I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but they felt like, I think maybe what they were saying was, if you were my kid's pediatrician, I would want them to have the qualities that you have. Even though you're so young, I would want them to have your qualities. I think that's what they meant. And so I listened to that. That was important feedback to me. And the more I thought about it, especially in high school, right, that's when you really start kind of making a little bit more of a plan after that Need for Speed Toyota Supra phase. Then I started really thinking about real life. I realized I had a lot of the other things you would want. So I'm pretty flexible. Like, I can delay gratification. I don't need to go to the party or whatever. I can just study. And in fact, I enjoyed studying. It was a thrill to just do tons of hours of studying. I took pride in that. And I guess I'm skipping a little bit ahead, but to college, I was always in the basement at Tappan Hall, which was the honors dorm that I was in. And there's a little table there, and I was just always there with a little pencil over my ear. I used to take notes only with pencil, kind of old school. And I just really enjoyed studying. And I owe a lot of that kind of interest in education and stuff like that to my mom. She was very supportive and helpful in my education. She would help me a lot when I was in high school with Latin homework, stuff like that. Did you take Latin?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
So you remember there's so many words and so many conjugations, so many genders, all this. It's insane. And every week you're just getting, 50 new words that, kind of look like English a little bit, so maybe you can figure it out, but some of them don't, and they don't make any sense. And we would make flashcards and just go through that over and over, hours. She would just really dump a lot of time into that, and she really supported that. And I think that, well, one, it helped me a lot with school, and two, just showed me her commitment as a parent and instilled that interest in studying and showing that's important. Other things, I'm pretty good at following rules, and I feel like that's an important part, right? You want an ethical person to be your doctor, and one part of ethics, I think, is, following the general rules for something. And I knew I could maintain my integrity and not kind of be pulled away from that, because I think there's a lot of distractions in life, and including in medicine. But another thing would be, I think I'm a team player too in general. I didn't play a lot of sports, mind you, and when I was in high school, but I did participate in a lot of bands and a lot of music, going back to my roots, I guess. And I realized that a lot of medicine, especially when you're training right, is team-based, team-oriented. And the flip side too is I could be a leader. I was very frustrated by inactivity and lack of initiative. So I could jump in and be the leader, but I could also fall back or fall to the side and work with the team. So I think all those things are just kind of slowly, you kind of just realize these things about yourself and go, I think I can do this. You don't know till you try. And that was the big gamble for me, was figuring out what my degree would be in undergrad.
So you start out, where'd you go to college?
I went to Miami University of Ohio.
Located in what city?
Oxford, Ohio.
And you grew up in what city?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
And how far is Cincinnati from Oxford?
Cincinnati, by car, so it's about 40 minutes. 40-minute drive. Far enough away that you're not coming back.
And why'd you choose Miami University in Ohio?
There were a lot of parts of that, or to that decision. One is financial, honestly. It's an in-state school, although people tend to forget that it is. And I had really good financial aid there. It was very inexpensive for my family, for my parents. It was between there and Ohio State, which is also an in-state school, obviously. But I felt like when I went and did my overnight, these honors programs will have these overnight sessions. I don't know if you guys had those kind of things, or your kids. And I thought that was really informative. The Ohio State one was fine. The people weren't very nice. And then I went to Miami, and it was just like I was home. I was actually extremely ill the night that I went to my overnight at Miami of Ohio. So ill nowadays, you probably would just call out, right? But back in the day, you got sick, you just went and did stuff. And they were so nice to me, even though I was extremely sick. We're down in the basement of Tappan, the same hall that I was talking about earlier, where I had my little pencil, and we all have our little sleeping bags, and they do the campus tour and show you everything. And a lot of this stuff I think comes down to vibes, and it was a good vibe. It's a beautiful school. And again, the aid was really good. It has a good reputation. My dad always kind of wanted to go there when he was a kid. He actually ended up going to Cincinnati for a bit, but he always kind of looked up to that place. So all those factors came together. Now, the thing about Miami is I would say it's not as technical as Ohio State. Ohio State is a huge university with a medical school, all this power. Miami does not have that, but you get that personal touch, that small school, little town kind of vibe with very good professors. And I think I kind of like that more curated experience. And so I went there. And so, when you go to college, right, there's that orientation where you have to pick your classes, and it's kind of like a competition against everyone else. And I took Latin, like I mentioned before, and I really thought my first job that I wanted to do was be a Latin teacher, like a high school Latin teacher. That was my number one
So you
job.
go to college, and what are you thinking you're going to be in the first month of college?
I thought, I'm going to see if I can hang and do this Latin thing, but really my fallback is what everyone told me I should do, which is medicine. Weird, right?
Latin teacher first,
Yes,
medicine backup.
backup. Not my number one.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never met anyone else with that setup. But so that was my plan. And so, but I realized though that to become a Latin teacher, it's more flexible in terms of the schedule. To be a doctor, you have to take the MCAT, and you need certain prerequisite courses, and that's hard. You have to structure your curriculum very carefully so that you get it done on time. Otherwise, you're going to be at Miami University for too long. You don't want to be there. You don't want to have to do a post-bac or something like that where you go back to school and do more stuff. No. So I structured it actually almost maybe subconsciously more that, yes, I'm going to become a doctor, basically, because I had to get going. I had to start doing chemistry. I had to start doing OChem. When I was in high school, I was not put on the science AP track, so I didn't take chemistry in high school. Like when you're an 8th grader or 7th grader, they kind of determine your whole life, which is crazy. And so I got wedged into the just normal level college prep. I ended up taking AP physics, and but I never took AP bio, I never took AP chem. So that was like another stressor. Is like, I've never even done this stuff, and this is a basic. But hey, let's do it. We got to structure it. Let's go for it. And I remember sitting, and I'll send you a picture of this. I mean, it's not the most amazing picture, but it's this hall at Miami called Kohler Hall, and that's where they get you ready for your classes and you fill out the forms. And I remember sitting on the stairwell there with my mom, and I'll be honest, I was crying. I was scared. I was really nervous about this decision that I was making, because who knows what's going to happen next? Am I going to mess up my Latin career? Am I not going to be able to hang with these other folks, most of whom took AP chemistry and AP bio and are just kind of doing it again just to boost their GPA and stuff like that? And but I looked at my mom and I said, this is my only chance. I have to take the chance now. And so we went for it.
This was at what point in your freshman year?
This is before you start.
Okay.
This is July.
When you're picking your courses.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because that's huge. Once you do that, it's really hard to undo that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, oh man. And this was still, I think we even filled it out on paper maybe or something, and then they put that into a computer. And then later they switched the computer. So it was pretty old school, very mechanical, and you had to just really get that good schedule and land it and run. So I can talk a little bit, I guess, about what undergrad was like, or...
The floor is yours.
Okay. So that first semester, it kind of lines up with what I was hinting at, where, a lot of these folks had already done these kind of classes, and they were very strong in chemistry. And I was like, oh my God, I took very basic chemistry. And that was very challenging. My professor, his name was Dr. Isaacson, he would go in and spend about 20 minutes before class started on a chalkboard just writing the entire lesson by hand. That's how old school he was. There was no PowerPoint. There's no even, what's that called? The projector? What's that called? Is it just called a projector?
Overhead projector.
Overhead projector. No. That's too new for him. So he had to use chalk, right? And he would slide up those big chalk things and bring down the other one. And it was just it was kind of very militaristic, really intense. But he was a great teacher. I would go to him for office hours, all that, all the time. And he was very supportive, and I did it. I got the A. I pulled it through miraculously. I mean, barely, just 93.01. That's an A. Got it. And so that kind of set the tone. Once I got through that, the rest kind of fell together. I did not really have that much trouble with OChem. Probably the harder classes, because I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. My first night of college, the hardest homework I had was classics homework for Latin. I was up till 3 a.m. trying to translate this graffiti from Rome. I forget what century. And it's all slang. So imagine how hard it is to understand what Gen Z kids are saying, and it's your own language. Now it's Gen Z kids, but they speak Latin, and it was a couple thousand years ago. So I was very overwhelmed, and it ended up kind of flipping, where even though I struggled a bit, it was hard in chemistry, it actually was easier than Latin. So I dropped the Latin, and I remember kind of tucking my tail and going up to the professor who taught one of the classes and being really sorry, but this isn't for me. And I dropped that class because I knew it was going to kill my GPA, and it was killing all my time.
So your number one career objective, Latin teacher, you dropped in your fall semester freshman year.
Yeah, I washed out.
Wow.
I washed out of Latin. Latin's harder to me, for me, than the other stuff. So it wasn't easy, the chemistry and all this, but I couldn't gut it. And it was pretty obvious early, even though I had a lot of passion for it. That's not enough. So switched over, or formally changed my degree to chemistry, and then realized that it was more advantageous to be a biochemistry major because it lines more of the prerequisites up with your medical school. So I switched to biochem and was a BS in biochemistry. So I think the worst part about that is, did you ever take analytical chemistry?
No, I was not smart enough to do biochemistry. I stayed in the biology world, which is the lightweight science courses and the lightweight math courses.
Yeah.
Biochemistry, you have to get, it's more intense.
There's calculus 1, calculus 2, calculus 3. That's pretty much it. They don't make you take, at least when I was there, anything more than that. No linear algebra, yada, all that stuff I don't know much about. But I actually loved calculus. I also wasn't put on the AP math course when I was in 8th grade or 7th grade. So that was new, but I loved calculus. I thought it was really exciting.
So in high school, were you one of these kids who was placed in the advanced courses, or were you in the regular courses?
I was a mixed bag.
Okay.
So for science, like I said, I was not placed into the track. And then what was the other one? What were we talking? We were talking about science and math. Science and math. I was not placed into the advanced
So
honors.
you're just a regular science and math dude coming
Yeah.
out of high school, and then you were able to do it in college.
Right.
Good.
So there was no, other than AP Physics, which has a little bit of calculus, but the most basic, like just like its derivative, or it's really easy. And they were really great though at my high school. They worked with me a lot. In fact, my senior year, I wanted to take AP Government, but because of the schedule, I couldn't actually fit that in. So they let me take it. I sat in the like normal college prep class, but I was taking the AP class. Like I would just read extra stuff on the side, and they accommodated that for me. So they kind of figured out ways, because they create these schedules so that basically the same clump of kids go to all the same classes together, at least at my little school. Maybe that's true for you guys and your kids. And it's really not fair, because there are kids that are at different strengths at different times. And I think I was kind of a late bloomer, and my 7th and 8th grade performance was nothing like my 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. And so even English, I was not placed into the honors, but I boosted up. Basically, my first going back to 9th grade, I upped my math. Actually, I was on a lower math, upped it to the college prep, upped my English to honors, and kind of just boosted everything up as much as I could. But going back to college, things just clicked there, and I think, again, it's just a testament to the university. I think they did a really good job of supporting me, and then that drive that I kind of intrinsically developed somehow, unclear how, between 8th and 9th grade. Something happened to me. Maybe it's puberty. I don't know. You just grow up, and my brain just, a switch flipped, and it was just go, don't stop. And when you're in college now, you're halfway, 2/3 of the way through. You're missing out on a lot of stuff. I don't know if that was your experience, but your friends are having more fun. And that's really hard. Luckily, I had a really good friend, Prashant, who is now a spine fellow at Emory, and he ultimately went to Harvard. But he and I could kind of share in our misery, so to speak. I had someone else, we went to a conference, it's called the Rust Belt RNA Conference, and I know it's so Midwest. And we were in the same lab together. It was like HIV research, and Prashant was way better at lab and all that. He was way better. But we had the same goal and same kind of drive. And it was nice actually to meet someone kind of more like me and who I could commiserate with. So that was a good support structure for me, and then helped me kind of get across the finish line. You do need help, even if you're the Terminator. You do need a little help.
Totally.
So that's kind of that part, and then it's time to apply to med school, right? And I don't know if you want to talk about this now or, yeah, okay, we could talk about it now. So at the end of my undergrad, just to give a context, I guess, for people that are interested in going into medicine, it's intense trying to get into medical school, and it just keeps getting harder. I had a 4.0 GPA. I was summa cum laude.
Hell yeah.
I took the MCAT. I did really well, really well. Highest score ever at Miami, other than Prashant. Prashant got the highest score ever at the time at Miami.
Are you willing to share your MCAT score?
I mean, we're so far removed. Yeah, I got a 40 on my MCAT. He got a 42.
I don't even know the current. That's an old scale.
That's the old scale, and we could talk about that.
And I don't know what the top score is. So I don't know. I know the current scale is in the 500s.
Yeah, so I can pull up here.
And the highest you can get is like a 528 or something like that.
Here, I'm looking it up right now. MCAT.
And the average score for people getting into medical school for an MCAT is like 511, something like that. So I don't know what 40 means.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now.
You got a what? A 40?
40.
And the highest you can get is?
45, but I'll walk you through it. I found this so easily the other day. We were talking about this in the clinic because a lot of our technicians want to go to medical school, and they are studying right now for the MCAT. And already I'm old. Like, my test is outdated. My numbers don't make sense to anyone anymore. Okay, so a 40, this is from some consulting website, I guess, to help kids get into med school.
Shamasian.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So a 40 is a modern day 524. That's greater than the 99th percentile.
Got it.
Prashant got a 42. That's a 526. Also greater than 99th percent. I don't even know what that means. At some point,
And he went to Harvard Medical
he
School?
went to Harvard Medical School. And he deserved it. He earned it.
That's great.
No doubt. The difference between a 40 and a 42, it seems small, but it's
exponential.
big, even though it's greater than the 99th percentile.
Right.
He probably missed either 0 or 1 question. You can actually miss 0, at least on the old test, and still not get a perfect score.
That's the perfect study buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, but we're kind of lone wolves. I don't know. I never, even though I utilized my mom's help a lot in high school, I became more self-sufficient, and I never studied in groups in college, really, ever. Because often other people aren't as interested or motivated as you, and they tend to slow you down instead of lifting you up, other than Prashant. But he was also a lone wolf, so, can't really study with another lone wolf.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I got that score, I got the GPA, and, maybe I wasn't shooting for the stars, but even with that, you can't easily get into Harvard. You can't get into these, like, top 5 schools.
So yeah, let's talk about that. You have a 4.0 GPA in undergrad. You have a top 1% MCAT. How easy is it to get into medical school with those types of statistics?
Yeah, I have this, actually. I
And
reviewed
this is back in the day, not even now.
Yeah, I have statistics, or I thought I did. Let's see. No, I think I was looking at, perhaps I was looking at ophthalmology residency. I don't have the statistics in front of me. I can just tell you the sort of qualitative. You kind of get it. So you get advice, right? There's a medical school advisor at your school usually. His name was Mr. Balfour. He was really great. And he'll kind of sit you down and they give you the brass tacks, like, this is where you're at, think about these kind of schools, whatever, and help you triage. And I don't remember him saying, like, oh, you're going to go to Harvard, or this will be easy for you. That was not the case. I mean, I applied. I actually have my list here of schools that I looked at, a quote, potential schools document that I found. University of Cincinnati, from there. Ohio State University was on my radar for undergrad. Mount Sinai in New York. I'm not sure why. Something about that school stuck out to me. Cornell, Case Western, Loyola in Chicago, Vanderbilt, which is always a school I wanted to go to, but I did not get in for undergrad. Michigan, they're sort of the powerhouse. Brown, St. Louis University, Emory University, and Wright State. Wright State was sort of the safety school for folks from Ohio. So a lot of in-state schools. Again, in Ohio we have I didn't say this before, but in Ohio we have so many medical schools, like 12, 13. You'll find one. There's plenty of opportunity, and the tuition's so reasonable, and med school debt is so overwhelming that ultimately for me, first I had to triage and select that level of school, but then there's that next phase, which is financial aid. Since my parents paid for my undergrad, but they're like, hey, you're on your own for med school. That's fine. Really, and they pushed me to say, really try to shoot really high for that med school if you can. Go to a very good undergrad. Don't get yourself into a bunch of debt from your undergrad just so you can go to med school and get into more debt. Instead, have no debt from undergrad and then spend that extra money, energy, whatever on your advanced graduate degree. was the strategy. So eventually, I think ultimately I got into many of these schools, but the best one I got into was Emory University.
How many medical schools did you apply to? Do you remember?
Based on my list here, 12. That's it.
Wow.
Is that high or low?
I think that's low.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's low.
I don't know. I was asking around a little bit recently, and I said, I don't know, is 14 normal? And they said yes, but who knows if that's real. I was surprised. I felt like, I imagined people were going to apply to like 30 or 40.
Yeah, I think that's more the norm. Cast a wider net.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you're going to get.
Right. The trade-off, though, is that when you cast a wider net, you have to fill out all the secondaries.
Exactly.
So secondaries are these little, essays that you have to write, and they're very difficult. I was reading some of my secondaries, and I couldn't believe how articulate. I was amazed. In this, maybe I was influenced by some of my English classes I was taking in college, but they were really good. I was very impressed and surprised, how invested I was in the answer. And I think if you're going to give that level of detail and focus to those questions, you really can't apply to 40 and do a good job.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of just was more strategic. Ultimately, I just wanted to go to med school and be a doctor. That was the most important thing. And luckily, Emory not only was the best school I got into, and I don't know, it's probably like top 20 school.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really great time there too. So these in-person meetings or overnights that you do for undergrad, they also have for med school, at least back when I was doing it. Maybe with COVID that's changed. But Emory just felt like home. It was a beautiful school. It was located in Atlanta, and it's actually right next door to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. And I haven't mentioned this, but I thought I was going to be a pediatrician because that was the doctor I was around the most as a kid, and moms told me I'd be a good pediatrician, all this. But I also really liked infectious disease. I thought that was really cool. Like, in particular, reading about HIV, and that was the lab I was in undergrad, was focused on HIV. I thought, this is my path. I will be a pediatric infectious disease doctor. I may even do the public, what's it called? The public, do you know what it's called? It's this CDC fellowship. They feature it in the movie Contagion. Have you seen that movie? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Kate Winslet is, she was me in my mind, I guess. She went to medical school and then does this fellowship. It's a one-year thing where they send you to epidemics. So, hey, there's a thing in Zimbabwe, go. Or, hey, there's something in Flint, Michigan, go. And your job is to collect data and help triage and figure out what's going on and find a solution. I thought that was really amazing. Unfortunately, Kate Winslet dies in Contagion, spoiler alert. So that wasn't a great push for that particular fellowship. But anyway, I digress. So I went there thinking, okay, this is my path. This is what I'll do. And I might as well set myself up as best I can. I'm going to the most prestigious place I can. And it's right by, the most powerful public health agency in our country. And they have this fellowship that's interesting to me. And maybe this will work out that way. And, lo and behold, we're both eye surgeons, right? So it didn't. I don't see children.
What happened?
A lot happened, right? I mean, I guess we'll have another episode about medical school, like what that's actually like. But in your third year of medical school, traditionally, depending on how your curriculum's structured, you do rotations, right, through different services. So the biggies, internal medicine, that's like when you're in the hospital, going around, seeing patients in the morning, writing notes, admitting patients from the ER. There's surgical rotations where it could be anything. General surgery is the most common. You're doing laparoscopic surgery, taking out upset appendices and doing hernia repairs. Neurology, psychology, or psychiatry, pediatrics. What are the other ones?
OB-GYN.
OB-GYN. And you notice I haven't said ophthalmology because I don't include that in that experience. But basically, I did all these rotations, and I knew I hated medicine, internal medicine. Rounding, which is, again, that process where you go around with the team and see all the patients in the morning, is fun for some people, but to me is a form of torture. Really not pleasant at all. And I had to buy special shoes just so I could stand long enough and not collapse walking around. And you do a ton of walking up and down the stairs. And that's not so bad. It's the standing. Do you remember that? All that. Oh man, builds character, but mostly it builds frustration for me. Rounds were really inefficient usually, and I just never felt like, oh, what are we doing? Sometimes the situations are just so complicated, and there's a lot of factors that go into it, and I just never felt like I was really making a difference. In surgery, though, I definitely could see the difference, and I enjoyed the general surgery rotation that I had with this guy named Dr. Finley. He runs a private practice that does, laparoscopic stuff, and he treats you like a resident on your rotation. There's only one of you. You're the only med student. It's just you and him and his nurse practitioner, and you guys run the show. I mean, you're doing the rounds by yourself. He'll let you hold the camera. I think he even let me assist like in a major way on the appendectomy. So I was like, oh, I can like make a difference. But I knew I didn't want to do general surgery because talk about discomfort. Rounding with internal medicine is nothing compared to being a general surgeon or general surgeon resident. It's just not a pleasant lifestyle. You really lose a lot. It's a huge sacrifice. By that time, I'd already met my now wife and just knew that I had different priorities than that. And so then you start looking at other things, right? Okay, I like surgery, but I don't want to do general surgery. What about ENT? Okay, ENT, head, neck, ears, all this. That's interesting. I did some rotations with them. Very cool rotation where they help people with singing issues correct their vocal cords, and they'll do these videos of their vocal cords just flapping in the wind. Really something to see. And they wear, that headband with the mirror on it?
Yeah.
What is that called? I don't even know what that's called.
I don't even know.
It's a cartoon doctor, old-timey thing. They actually use that. And so I was like, this is cool. You know, he flips it down, shines the light, and they look through this little hole in the middle, and they can see what they need to see. It's so old-fashioned, but it still works. So really enjoyed that experience, but it just wasn't clicking. The people wasn't a good vibe, good fit with the types of folks that went into ENT. I also looked at orthopedics, orthopedic surgery. Wow, talk about not my scene. I was at Grady Hospital, which is our county hospital in Atlanta, and I'm just not, I really enjoyed the experience, and the residents were very kind, but the traditional orthopedic person, again, is this big kind of gym guy who's kind of a bro, and that's not me. And it didn't click there. So then now what? Okay, I'm running out of surgical subspecialties. Well, how about ophthalmology, huh? That sounds pretty cool. So I elect to do a few little visits with ophthalmologists. I don't think I'd ever seen a cataract surgery. In fact, I tell this story sometimes to people. When I was in when I was in undergrad, I found out that the valedictorian for my high school wanted to go to medical school, just like me. I wanted to go to med school. They wanted to go to med school. And she told everyone she wanted to be an ophthalmologist. And I thought in my head, what a stupid job. Why would you want to be an ophthalmologist? That makes no sense to me. You go to med school to be an internal medicine doctor, to be a pediatrician, to treat infectious disease, not do eye surgery. What is that? Who cares? What a waste of time. So funny in hindsight. I really judged her strongly. She's now a pathologist, and I'm an ophthalmologist. So what is that? I don't know. It's interesting how that all shakes out. So I go to ophthalmology, and the people were nice. They're happy. That's unusual. Everyone else I met is sad. Then I went and did a full rotation where you, I think 2 weeks were at the VA, 1 or 2 weeks were at the VA hospital, eye clinic, going to the OR, being in the clinic with the residents. And the other 2 weeks are at Grady, the county hospital. It's a little more rough and tumble, knife and gun club kind of situation. Everyone has CMV retinitis, just really intense eye problems going on. And they have no resources. Everything just intense. But the people are happy, and they treat you right, and they have interesting diseases. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, this is kind of like how I felt when I did my overnight at Miami, or when I did my overnight at Emory. I'm here. These are my people. I'm not alone anymore. And that it's very isolating. I think it was isolating for me to go through all those rotations and have all my friends from med school know exactly what they wanted to do. They went on the rotation I'm an OBGYN, and that's what I do. I save women's health, and they just knew. and I'm the only one left. I'm running out of things. I'm not sure. And I'm like, maybe, I went to med school. Maybe I'm not supposed to be a doctor because I can't find something that makes me happy and is a good fit for me. And that was scary. It was a scary time. But again, they were so great at Emory, and I owe so much to them. And in particular, we have this program called Discovery Program, which is a research-based time. It's a dedicated 5 months of research at Emory. I think I was looking at Dell's curriculum, and they have something kind of like that. So that 5 months, that's protected time for you to do research. And I was able to do it at the VA with a doctor named Dr. Ma, who is a comprehensive ophthalmologist who has a big passion for tele-ophthalmology, which is an important thing, especially for veterans, because at least in Atlanta, there's only one VA hospital, and you're covering the entirety of North Georgia, or almost all of Georgia, and some parts of South Tennessee. So these veterans have to drive like 3 hours just to get their eye exam, get a pair of glasses, or have cataract surgery. It's very hard for them. And so she created this model where you put technicians with OCT, refracting tools, even a little glasses stand, so they could pick like a basic, like two towers of glasses, and the veteran would just pick like, okay, I want that one. And that was it. So they could get this full suite of imaging. They can get a pair of glasses out at their primary care clinic, which were dispersed across the entire state. So they wouldn't have to come all the way in for these routine screens to Atlanta. They could just go out there. So we did a great study, it was a prospective study, which is unusual for a med student to get to do. And we kind of tried to show, or we did show, we validated the model in terms of the safety of using fundus photos, OCTs, refraction, in terms of detecting basic eye diseases like diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, all this stuff. I learned how to refract. I learned how to talk to patients. I learned how to take OCT pictures, and her support and other doctors that were there really lifted me up and helped, I think, with my next phase, which was residency, getting into residency, because the volume keeps going up here. High school, I'm building up, college building up, med school building up, and then really the residency is sort of like, I think, the most important thing for anyone. Med school is important, but residency is what counts. And they helped me get into my ultimately the best place for me, which was Bascom Palmer Eye Institute in Miami.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. So you start and you do your 2 weeks at the VA, 2 weeks at Grady Ophthalmology, and then somehow you end up in this 5-month research program.
Yeah.
Is this your third year?
Discovery, so we don't have summers, just like some schools don't have summers, so it's all truncated. So technically I started my third year a year and a half in. So you kind of start your clinical rotations, like with internal medicine, surgery, all that, a year and a half, not at year 3.
Right.
And so that was more, it's like mid-third year.
Got
is
it.
when I'm doing Discovery.
At what point did you say, this feels like home?
I think when I knew for sure, like, is there one moment that this is ophthalmology, this is what I will do? I don't know if there's like one moment. I think it was that rotation, or those 4 weeks
That was enough.
That was enough because, well, a few things. The people were nice, like I said, all that. But I could tell that things were changing in ophthalmology in a good way. There was progress. There was new technology coming out.
What year was this?
Third year, end of third year. Or, sorry.
2000.
2000 and... must be 18 or 19, 2019.
Okay.
No, I forgot when I went to med school. Start over. That's residency. I was already in residency then. This was 2015. That sounds right. 2015.
So 2015,
or
you're
16.
pretty much in your third year of medical school.
It gets a little messy, yes.
You graduated medical school 2016?
17.
Okay, fine.
But
so this
everything's
is 2015, 16. You're experiencing ophthalmology. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and
And you only did one ophthalmology rotation, and then you did this research 5-month block, did you do any other ophthalmology rotations? Did you do away rotations in ophthalmology? Anything like that?
So during discovery, I didn't just sit around and do Excel sheets. I actually went to the OR. I learned how to prep and drape patients.
How? Did you just do this on your own, or was this part of a dedicated ophthalmology rotation?
Basically, Dr. Ma was kind enough to let me accompany her to whatever I wanted to do. Go to the clinic, go to the OR. I could go with other surgeons. I could do whatever I wanted. And so it was sort of the ultimate sub-eye experience. You had that 4-week thing, but this was, longer, more tailored. I could do whatever I wanted. I learned how to do fundoscopy, the whole thing. So basically I felt very prepared for residency, which at the time was rare. Most people didn't have that time or experience. And then your intern year, which we'll talk about later, was just only about internal medicine. You barely got any ophthalmology. And so you start your residency totally unprepared. And so, the discovery period was really important in terms of building my skills, giving me that extra touch. I did not do away rotations. I actually felt like it was my opinion and the advice from people I talked to that away rotations only can hurt your chances and not help your chances.
Why?
Well, okay, you go to San Francisco, you go to UCSF, for example, and you do your away rotation there for a month, and during that month, you happen to look at your phone because you are getting a message about applying to med school or to residency, and the chairman is walking in the hallway, and he or she sees you and goes, hey, why is that guy on his phone? It seems like he's on his phone, right? And then maybe someone else vaguely remembers you on your phone, maybe also for another legitimate reason. But then you're the phone guy, right? You're distracted. You're not really there. So you have to be so cognizant of every little cue and all this. And most of the feedback is so arbitrary and random, I felt like, was what I was told, or what I could see even later when I was in residency and we'd have away rotation students, that people would offer up these broad sweeping generalizations about their character based on a 13-minute experience, maybe, or even less, a couple minutes. And that's what made or break them. And so that's not real life. It's not fair. Now, if you go and you just are very focused, I guess you get lucky and you don't accidentally look at your phone or no one judges you in some random way, maybe it could help you. And if you happen to have a lot of skills and know what you're doing and be helpful, which I think is hard as a med student to be helpful, and that's all we want as a med student. That's the med student dream. I want to be helpful. I want to be useful. Quick tangent, when I was at the VA on ICU, I, in the computer system, could order chest x-rays. I could, as a med student, that power to order chest x-rays after they put in lines and all this so we can confirm their placement made me feel so helpful and like a god. And literally it was just a click for an x-ray, which is nothing to a real doctor or a resident. But going back, I felt like, you're going to go, you're not going to be experienced enough, you're not going to be helpful in the way you think you are, and you may be misjudged.
So I work with visiting medical students, and I spend just one day with them during their 1-month rotation here doing ophthalmology at UT. And I would just say my advice would be, I think you're on point where you go, you want to be useful, and as a medical student in ophthalmology, it's hard to be useful. You're really just learning.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, in my opinion, I would take your assessment of the away rotation and I would apply it to the entire medical school experience. There is so much subjectivity in how you're evaluated.
Yeah.
You have to do everything at a high level.
Yes.
And my advice is you have to be there. You have to be there before everybody else and stay later than everybody else and just be totally available. And I agree. The phone, be attentive, polite, prepared, and
have questions.
interested. Yes.
Think about yesterday.
And be knowledgeable. Don't fake it.
Yeah.
Come in with some knowledge, but that requires preparation beforehand.
Yeah.
So you're fortunate that you didn't have to do away rotations.
No, that's a privilege, to
Yeah.
be clear. Some folks have to do it because of their scores or their whatever, their academics, or their school. Let's say you go to an institution that does not have an ophthalmology program. Wow, what a disadvantage.
Yeah, I think they see it as a miniature, as an extended job interview at a program that they're going to apply to. And if they, let's say I wanted to go to Ohio State for their ophthalmology program because maybe I'm from Ohio and I'm here at Baylor College of Medicine going to medical school. Well, then I'd go to Ohio State for a month, spend a rotation there. They would know me.
Yeah.
So when I apply, I would be a little more familiar to them. It may give me a leg up
Sure.
to when they're evaluating me. They may go, "Oh, I remember Max. He was a pretty nice guy, and yeah, I remember." So it gives you more a more tangible assessment rather than just reading your essays and looking at your scores. So
I would also say, for me too, I mean, I wasn't concerned that anything real, there would be any real problem. But again, it was more this concern about these random subjective opinions that become so heavily anchored by, oh, well, we trust that third year resident. They know everything. And, and then your whole position at that place is ruined because of that. And then I had a counterpoint. Let me think about it. Another thing too is I knew I could interview well. I just know that about myself, that I can talk to people and connect with them in short periods. I don't need to spend a month with someone to build that bond. I could do it faster.
how did you know that?
I know that. I don't know. I know thyself. I like talking to people. I enjoy that social interaction. And I think it helps too when you're really excited about what you're doing. And I was very excited to be an ophthalmology resident and to learn about it. And so I didn't really foresee any issues in terms of the interview itself. Now, the way isn't just about your interview, it's getting that interview, right? Getting in the door, get your foot in the door. But I felt like, again, my setup, my scores, my personal, my letters, everything were strong, and that I could stand behind those. And if they didn't want me because of those things, then maybe I shouldn't be there.
So how many ophthalmology residency programs did you apply to?
40. Not all of them. I know people do that. I don't even know how many there are now.
I hear some of the students who are coming to do away rotations here at UT are applying to 80.
Yeah, that's probably most of them, right?
I don't know how many there are.
Again, and you could
40
see
is
this,
a lot.
You could see this maybe from my med school list, even my undergrad list. I tend to be, although with residency I pushed myself a little bit more, I guess, but I tend to be realistic. Even though I was confident about my ability to interview, I'm still realistic that there's certain things I want and there's certain things programs want, and maybe I'm not the right fit for them. And so I tried to find fit before I'd apply. So my numbers I wasn't just netting, so to speak, just throwing a big net and praying. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go.
How did you choose those 40 programs?
I went to their websites. So you lean a lot on that. And then also where people who went to your med school went. So we had a big contingent go to Wills and Baylor and Michigan and any of these places. I basically reach out to all of them and just get their feedback and use that to kind of structure my list and push things up or down.
So Emory medical students typically do well in ophthalmology matches.
I would say surprisingly well, very well.
Because what you named is the top, they're only in the top 20.
Yeah, they do really well. We had a good streak back when I was going. I think it helped that very few people wanted to do it. There wasn't saturation. I noticed, like at the University of Miami.
How many medical students are in your class at Emory?
I think it was 170.
Okay.
140, 170.
And how many applied to ophthalmology out of that 170?
4.
Okay.
Counting me.
Okay.
So, again, go back to University of Miami, where I did my residency. 14 of the kids wanted to do ophthalmology, and their med school's smaller. I think it's maybe like 100.
At what medical school?
Miller School of Medicine. It's the University of Miami.
Oh, yes, in Miami.
In Miami,
Yes.
Florida.
Yes.
Not
well,
to
they
confuse
have an
anyone.
ophthalmology. You
Yeah,
can
they
talk
have a
about
program.
that.
But so that helps too. So
Right.
they're connected with a very large ophthalmology program. But
There are how many medical students at University of Miami?
let me look it up. University of Miami Medical School size. Oh no, it's bigger than I thought. Scratch that, 200 per year.
And they're 14 apply.
14. So it's just too much competition within the school, and places don't like that. They don't want to take too many kids from one place. If they took too many the year before, all this, and you're also, unfortunately, you're judged based on your predecessors. So if someone from Emory had gone to XYZ residency and they were a superhero, well, that's great. That boosts you. But let's say they're not the superhero. They're terrible. Well, then you are the same as them, even though you're a completely different person, everything. So you kind of get lumped in with them. And so you have crowding, and then you have precedent. And the precedent can be really helpful, or it could hurt you. We'd never had anyone go to Bascom Palmer, ever, from Emory. At least not in the few decades. So I was the first one.
Interesting.
And I'm, I guess, proud to say that they took another Emory kid later, 2 years, 3 years later. So I guess I'm one of the
How many
good ones, hopefully.
programs did you interview with out of the 40 that you applied to?
So it gets a little messy because when you get interview invites, they're competing times. So at the time, you'd go physically to do these interviews, and they all lump. They all do like, okay, November 4th at this time. And so you can't be in Chicago and in California at the same time. So you end up doing this. I actually created this incredibly complicated calendar where I would put all the interview dates potential for every school that I applied to. And I created a rank list within those so that as I received the things, I could quickly cancel, accept, triage, so I could get the best one for each of those dates. I don't know if your kids did that too, or oh no, they're too young at this
It's
time.
all virtual now.
Yeah.
So you can interview more easily at more locations without the travel schedule and the travel expense. It's
Yeah.
all virtual.
Which we could talk about another episode, but I
Right.
really enjoyed the physical interviews, and
I
I wouldn't
agree.
trade that for anything.
I agree.
So I ended up going to 14 interviews.
Oh, wow.
So that was a lot of money.
That's a lot.
It's expensive. So there was a cost associated with that. But once you reach, at the time, if you had 10 or more interviews, the odds of you matching were extremely high, like 95%. So that's why I wanted so many, because the odds were in my favor. And I ended up ranking all of them. That was hard because there was one program, I don't want to say it, but that I really did not like. And they just were they said some stuff about Emory. And long story short, it wasn't a good fit. But then I had to think really hard. At the end of the day, don't I want to be an ophthalmologist? If I don't rank this one, what if I don't match? That was really hard because that's usually not how I think. I'm usually more principled and sort of like, take me as I am. If you want me, have me. If not, then it's okay. I'll go the other way. But I ended up ranking them. And
How high?
Oh, bottom.
Oh, okay.
14th.
Okay.
But that was hard. I mean, if more traditional me would have just left them off the list and just took the chance. But it's so high stakes when you're trying to get an ophthalmology residency. It's so competitive. And you've worked so hard for so many years. You're like, well, I could tough it through those 3 years and be an ophthalmologist at the end. And maybe I can get into a really good fellowship and kind of boost my skills. Because sometimes the residencies don't prepare you enough. And so you have to supplement with your fellowship, unfortunately. So that was that process. And actually, Bascom Palmer, where I went, is I actually did not apply to it initially. I, again, am sort of a realist most of the time and was like, I'm not going to get in there. And Bascom Palmer, you don't know, it's I mean, it's all maybe arbitrary, but the U.S. News and World Report, it's the #1 residency. Same for Doximity, which is a ranking program for residency programs. It's #1, has been 14 years, 20, I don't know, it's some ridiculous number of years, again and again and again. And I was like, you know what? I don't think that's me. I bet they're really malignant. I bet they're really mean to their residents. If they have that kind of reputation, they're probably kind of snobby. And I don't want to be a part of that. That's not who I am. But I was sitting around. I'd already submitted my initial wave of applications, 39, I guess. And I was talking to my wife, and I was like, whatever, it's Bascom Palmer. Let's do it. So I sent it in probably 2 weeks later, like not on time or not early. And the way it works too, when you get the interviews, is they will call you usually, at least at the time, or give you an email. And they call you at Bascom, and I was sleeping when they called me. I think I was coming off a night ER shift or something, and I missed the call from Bascom Palmer. And if you don't get back to them fast, you can lose your spot. You can lose your interview place. And I remember running around like a madman, and it was a mess. I had to like move all my other travel just to accommodate them because I wanted to go. I was like, all right, I got my foot in the door. I know I can interview well. Now it's just, what are they like? Are they actually like my perception? Are they nice? What are they like? And actually, when I got the interview, I called my wife, and I won't cuss, but I was like, mother effing Bascom Palmer. I was like jumping around. I was so happy, really ecstatic that I just had that opportunity, and couldn't believe it that they even offered it to me. So went there. I guess we could talk about that now, just that interview process. So you go there and you get off the plane, and for some reason they have you walk outside sometimes when you land in Miami. Have you ever been there?
Mm-hmm. I've walked outside of an airplane. And,
it's weird, but why do it in Miami? It's like 1,000 degrees, so you get hit by this wave of heat, and it's so overwhelming. I was like, I am not in Atlanta anymore. And you go to the interview, and again, I was expecting just a lot of snobbery, a lot of just like intensity, and it was the opposite. They were so nice and normal, and they had families with kids, and the attendings are nice, and they care about you, and they remember your name, and they have everything. They have an emergency room just for eyes. And it's actually a full ER. It has the full accreditation of an ER, not some urgent care clinic that pretends like it's an emergency room. They had their own CT scanner, 2 of them, and an MRI that only you could use. All yours, all night long. You could just call in a tech, and they would do an MRI for you as the first-year resident. You had your own clinics. Your clinic. I had a whole Dr. Medart's patients. I had every week this clinic. It's called PHT, and they were yours. It was everything. It was cataract. Once you start doing cataract surgery, a lot of medical retina. Did 1 million injections, PRP, tons of horseshoe tears. Most of them at the beginning are follow-ups from the emergency room that you're just taking care of, corneal ulcers, all that. And then others are passed down from prior residents, and you're picking up where they left off. And you see it all, very sick, very healthy. I feel like it was probably 70% Spanish speaking was the clinic. I don't speak Spanish. I took Latin, remember? So that was hard. But they have great translation services and all that. So going back to the interview process. So I was impressed by the clinical structure, that you got this autonomy that was rare. Some programs really handhold you very hard, and you don't get to do much. And it's more of a observership than a residency. People are just very particular with eye surgery, and for good reason, very careful. But Bascom was structured differently because we had a chief resident who was also a retina surgeon, and they'd gone to Bascom, and so they knew the system, and they would let you do whatever you wanted.
But he's a chief resident who's a retina surgeon. So is the chief resident a fellow?
Well, technically. So they do 1 year of retina fellowship, and then they graduate them after 1 year, and then they stay on to be a chief. But the chief is I mean, they do everything, but mostly they're doing retina surgery. So they do surgery Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then clinic on Tuesday and
So
Thursday.
then, do they do another year of retina after their chief residency?
No.
Oh, so their chief is their chief year is a combined second year of fellowship and administrative.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Got it.
It's a huge task. It's a lot of work, and they are learning how to be solo surgeons with the sickest patients, and so it's a big. The volume is insane for them and for us. That's how I started doing sutured lenses, was with them, the retina team. Did Acreos lenses, did a few of those. That's rare for residents to get to do like a vitrectomy and put an Acreos in. So that was a really eye-opening experience for me, no pun intended. What else was great about Miami? I mean, just there was limitless opportunities. And at the end of these interviews, you always go to like a dinner, like a meet and greet. And most of the ones I'd gone to were a real snooze fest, really boring. People would go, food was fine, and then as soon as it was like time to end, they would run away. All the residents would disappear, and you're like, oh, like they didn't really want to be here. They didn't really want to meet us. But at Basket, it was completely different. They had their first party, and then we had the after party. So that was weird. I'd never gone to an after party at one of these. It was very Miami. And people were having fun and dancing and just being normal folks. And I'd never seen anything like that, and it really stuck with me. So when I came home, I was like, this is kind of where I want to go, but not fully. That was not my number one. My number one was Duke. Duke is the opposite in terms of the vibe. It's, a small town, more academic, more hand-holding, but it's family friendly. And I was married, and it's more quiet. Oh, this might be a better fit. So I actually didn't rank. I ranked Bascom number 2, and I ranked Duke number 1, which was a crazy move in hindsight. Bascom's way better. It's a way better experience, just objectively. And then when I matched there, I mean, that was another surreal moment, getting called by Steve Getty, who was the program director forever, and being told, you're a superstar of superstars, and he always says that, and it was amazing. I couldn't believe it had happened to me, and maybe in some ways I'd ranked it number 2 because I felt like I still wasn't worthy of it, if that makes sense. Like I didn't apply to it first because I didn't think there was a concern about snobbery and all that, but also maybe I'm not cut out for that. Maybe I can't cut it with those guys. So it's like a little defense mechanism. Like, I'll just make them number 2. So if I don't get it, it's not my fault. It's just the rank, it's just the system. I guess I should explain for people who don't know that the way it works when you apply for residency is you put in a list of places in order of your preference. So Duke number 1, Bascom Palmer number 2, so on. And then the programs also rank all the applicants. And then using software, it tries to provide the optimal rank or match between what the people want and what the programs want. And there's compromise to that. People lose out so that others can rise up. All this so that we get an overall best match. And so you never know
only
what you're
get
going to get.
accepted to one program. Got it.
And you can't back out. Well, you can, but then you'll never be able to match again in ophthalmology. And there have been people who've done that. I knew some that, not from Emory, but who'd matched, hear stories or meet people, and then they back away. And man, I couldn't believe that, because it's actually a little mean, because there are other people that really, really wanted those spots, and then they took that spot and then kind of give it away. And yeah, it goes into a scramble where people can try to get in. But maybe if they hadn't applied, that other person on their list, it would have pulled them in, and that would have been their spot, and they would have been set. So it's a complicated game. There's a lot of psychology to it and luck. And so I was lucky, very lucky. I've always been lucky, I guess. I was lucky to get to go there and experience that. And we can talk more about Bascom some other time, but it's a really special place. And that was sort of the culmination of this trajectory from high school to college to med school and then to that. So yeah, that's kind of my journey. I've done a lot of talking.
All right, so that's your residency, and you did a fellowship.
Right.
Can you comment on that?
So I think the trend.
What's a fellowship anyway for the general population?
So the residency, right, is that training that you do after medical school, that kind of core education, so to speak, and hands-on experience.
And how long is the ophthalmology residency training program?
So there's a year of internship, which is basically, as I mentioned before, more general medicine. Although it's changed recently, it's more balanced, where you get more ophthalmology experience. But when I was doing it, I did very little ophthalmology that first year. And then it's 3 years of residency. That's when you really earn your stripes, start doing surgery, usually in your second year of residency, depending on where you go. And then you have a choice, right, at the end of your third year. Do I go into practice, whether that's private practice, academics, whatever, or do I commit myself to more education? By this point, I've gone to undergrad 4 years, med school 4 years. I've done 1 year of internship and 3 years of residency. That's 12 years. Do I want to do more? That's very personal. I think it depends on you, of course, but also your program culture. At Bascom, everyone did fellowship. It's very unusual to not do one. Everyone. And usually it was retina. There was 1 year at some point in the near past, or a series of years, where 20 out of 21 residents did retina. 20 out of 21. That one person, I think, did plastics. So there's a precedent to do retina. Again, our chiefs are retina surgeons, so we're influenced strongly by them and that culture. And this is another one of those things where you got to find the vibe. And no offense to retina, it was not my vibe. It was not, they weren't my people. I just knew that. But I did like the glaucoma people. I liked the cornea people and the cataract people. And I liked those sutured lenses that we did with retina. How could I do sutured lenses and not do a retina fellowship, basically? How could I do it anterior segment stuff, advanced anterior segment stuff, without having to be a retina surgeon? So that was my quest. And so I looked really hard for programs that are just anterior segment, and there aren't that many of them.
And what's the anterior segment?
Yeah, I should say that. So the anterior segment is the front portion of your eyeball. So anything from the cornea basically to the back of the lens, the clear lens that's inside your eye. Just behind the lens is vitreous humor, which is a jelly-like substance. If you keep going back, you hit retina. So jelly to retina is retina surgeons. Lens to cornea is everyone else.
And what's in between the lens and the cornea?
The anterior chamber and the iris and a lot of stuff. The angle, which is the drainage system inside your eye, kind of like your sewage drainage system or the sink in your house that pulls away the fluid that your eye makes or that your sink makes. And so, yeah, I knew I had those particular interests. It's very particular. I had to find something like that. Thankfully, there are some people that have come around in the past 10, 15 years that are really into that kind of stuff. Like Ahmed is a big person in ophthalmology. You should definitely check out his stuff if you're interested in ophthalmology or just curious who this person is. He's really an innovative glaucoma and anterior segment surgeon who trained under another innovative and interesting surgeon named Dr. Crandall at the University of Utah, who unfortunately passed away not too long ago. And Ahmed is Canadian, so he lives in Canada, and his program was there. And folks that were like me that were interested in that had gone there and then went back to the States. Usually they're from the United States, to go to Canada, come back. And one of those guys is named Arsham Shabani, and he's at Washington University in St. Louis.
He trained with Ike Ahmed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So he is very Ike in terms of, or Crandall, whoever, depending on how far back you want to go in their lineage.
Yes.
So there's themes, and then there's other schools that are kind of you get these sort of techniques and stuff from based on who you trained with. It's kind of it's an apprenticeship, right? That's how these sort of super specialized things end up being, where it's a very one-on-one experience, and you gain their insights and their techniques, and you kind of mold yourself from them, but then you supplement it with your own experiences and then your own learning to be your own person, right? And so again, I was looking around, and Arsham's program really stood out to me. Another program that stood out was Ike's, and those were kind of my top two for fellowship. I was willing to do some glaucoma at the time. I don't like glaucoma anymore, but I was willing to do it at the time. And they emphasized that and the anterior segment and, you know, complex cataract surgery. And ultimately it did come down more to family too. My wife was pregnant at the time. Moving to another country during COVID was a tough thing. To get a passport, not a passport, to get a visa to go there is extremely difficult. And the quality of life at the Toronto program is very low. It's hard. Not that hard's bad, but I was about to have a kid, my first kid, and I basically wouldn't have been there ever. And that wasn't, first, it's hard to get in, hard to get there physically, to get all that. There's COVID, you got a new baby, and then you can't even enjoy your new baby and be with your family. And that's when I realized that that's not really worth it, even though Ike is a really great person and an innovator. It just wasn't the right fit for so many reasons. It just didn't click. The interview didn't click either for me. And it was virtual. Maybe that was why. You know, virtual interviews have their ups and downs. And with WashU, however, even though it was virtual, I did click, and just getting to talk to Arsham a little bit, you know, via email, on the phone, I clicked there, and we decided to go there and do that, live that experience in St. Louis. And it's Midwestern, I'm Midwestern, it kind of all made sense. And it was a great time. It's not just Arsham there. Of course, there's other doctors, Dr. Seek and Dr. Siegfried, who's going to be the president of the American Glaucoma Society in a year or two. So, and Dr. Cass, who's a super famous glaucoma specialist who ran the OATS trial, and just a really powerhouse of ophthalmology historically and to this day. So much has happened at WashU. Bernie Becker is probably the really famous glaucoma guy there. I don't know if you know him, but terms of historically, that's a very powerful program. And another advantage to that place too is you get to do your own surgeries, so you have blocked time as a fellow alone. You can ask for help if you want it, but again, autonomy. I could pick that up like I had the autonomy at Bascom, and I could apply that and just kind of get my feet wet as being a solo surgeon. And I could teach. I was interested in education and teaching, and you staff the residents on consults, but also in the OR at the VA. So I trained folks how to do cataract surgery. And that was unique. Autonomy, diversity of experience, kind people, and you get to do that awesome thing called anterior segment surgery. So that's, and then the rest we can talk about maybe some other time, but
Very
that's
good.
the journey.
Well, I think we're going to call it for episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Thank you.
I got to know you a lot better.
Yeah.
And so hopefully the audience will learn something from us as well. So I guess we'll sign off until next time.
Yes.
And thank you for seeing eye to eye.
That was pretty good.
It works.
Yeah.